So welcome to Wednesday of our first week of online learning. Monday and Tuesday you learned about adding and subtracting fractions, and believe it or not, those are a little bit harder. Multiplying fractions is probably the easiest. Literally, when we multiply, we're going to multiply the two numerators together, which will be 2 and 4, and then multiply the two denominators together, which are 3 and 5. And from there, we're going to either reduce if we have to, or we'll have our final answer. So when we get started here, notice we're just going to take this 2 times this 4, and we're going to leave that in the numerator. And then we're going to take this 3 times this 5, and we're going to put that in the denominator. 2 times 4 gives us 8, and 3 times 5 gives us 15. And since 8 over 15 is as reduced a fraction as you can get, we're really done with the answer. Here's another one. Pretty simple in that there won't be any reductions when we're done. But this one's a little bit different. It has a negative sign. Real quick, I want to show you up here that negative 1/2 is the same as negative 1 over 2, which is same as 1 over negative 2. You can put these in the calculator and prove it if you need to, but all of these are identical. So it doesn't matter here if we put the negative with the numerator or with the denominator, we'll get the same answer. And I'll work them both out to show you here, okay? So here, first we're going to do the 2 times, and we'll put the negative with the 4. And that leaves us with just 7 times a positive 3 on bottom. If we were to put negative on top and bottom, negative divided by negative gives us a positive, and then the negative would go away. And we don't want that to happen here. We get 2 times negative 4, which is negative 8. And we get 7 times 3, which is 21. Remember a minute ago, I told you if the negative is up here, we can literally just write it out to the front side of it. And negative 8 over the 21 won't be reduced, and we can write it as negative 8 over 21. These are exactly the same. Now, I told you, you can put the negative on bottom if you want. So here we would have 2 times a positive 4 over 7 times a negative 3. 2 times 4 is 8. 7 times negative 3 is negative 21. Notice again, these are the 3 forms that we had earlier, and all of them come out to be the exact same as negative 8 over 21. Okay. Again, one of the words you're going to hear here soon is reduce. If we have something that can reduce, we need to work on that. I'll give you a quick example of that. If you put 2 over 4, or 2 divided by the 4 in the calculator, you would get 0.5. 0.5 as a fraction is 1/2. Okay. Notice that 2 over 4 is the same as 1 over 2. That's because if we're going to factor something out, or how many 2's are in 2, that's the same as saying 2 divided by 2 over 4 divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Notice how we've reduced our fraction. We'll see that in some of the upcoming problems. In this problem, the first thing we're going to see is that we have a negative times a negative, and you'll recall from all the other math we've done, if we were to multiply a negative 3 times a negative 2, a negative times a negative makes a positive, and 2 times 3 makes 6. Same thing applies here. This is nothing more than multiplication of 2 negative numbers, and a negative times a negative creates a positive. So in essence, we can just make these positives, or we can really just rewrite this as 6 over 5 times 1/2. Okay. Now, if we were to straight multiply this like I showed you a minute ago, we get the numerator times the numerator, 6 times 1, and the denominator times the denominator, 5 times 2. 6 times 1 is 6, and 5 times 2 is 10. If you notice, these are both even numbers. And since we know that 2, I'll write the words out, 2 goes into 6 3 times. What this really means is 6 divided by 2 is 3. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 2 goes into 10 5 times. Or 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now, 6/10 and 3/5 are the exact same number. Let me show you in the calculator so you can see what I'm talking about. If we do 6 divided by 10, we get 0.6. Okay. Now, if you go into math here and you hit enter for fraction and hit enter, notice it reduces it to this 3/5 right here. Okay. Why? Because 3 divided by 5 is also 0.6. Okay. So you can also use the calculator to help you reduce the fractions until you get better at it. That's one way for you to check your math. All right. The other thing we can do here real quick is, if you notice this, if we have 6 times 1 over 5 times 2, which is true, then we can rearrange this. Okay. We could say this is 1 times 6 over 5 times 2. And 1 over 5 doesn't really change. But what is 6 divided by 2? Well, that's 3. Notice I now have 1 times 3 over 5, and I wind up with my 3/5 already reduced. So if you can see where to reduce early, then you can save a couple steps a little bit later. Okay, here's another problem. It's straightforward. We would just do 9 times 10, and that would give us 90. Or the 3 times the 5. So over the 3 times the 5, and 3 times 5 gives us 15. If you don't know right away what that equals, again, you can do 90 divided by, did I get divided by in there? 15, and you get 6. So this is 6. Now, there's another way for us to get 6. If you'll notice here, and I know most of you will understand this, I'm starting with 9 divided by 3 times 10 divided by 5. 9 divided by 3, most of you will tell me that that's 3. And 10 divided by 5, most of you will tell me that's 2, which they are. And 3 times 2 is 6. And notice, again, if we do all the reducing up front, then we get to an easier, faster answer at the end. We don't have a large fraction like 90 over 15 that we have to reduce. Okay, so this is the beginning of the lesson. Well, actually, it's the end of the lesson. And for what you need to do now is you need to press pause. And after a few minutes, you need the best thing to do is try to print out the document we sent you, or at least write down all the problems on a piece of paper. And then you need to try to do what you can to work out the problems. There's 10 problems on the next page. Try to work out those problems on your own. And once you've worked them out, feel free to press play again on the video. And at that point, you will see me work out all of the problems. I'll only spend a few minutes working those out. Feel free to stop and pause that video anytime you need to. Okay, so here's our first 10 problems. This is pretty straightforward. We have no ability to reduce early. We literally have 2 times 1 over 3 times 3, and 2 times 1 is 2. 3 times 3 is 9, and 2/9 is already reduced. There's nothing more we can do to that problem. Here, we got pretty straightforward. 3 times 3 over 8 times 4. 3 times 3 is 9. 8 times 4 is 32. And again, we have a fraction at the end that won't reduce, and we're done with our answer. Moving on to the next problem. I've got 2 times 1 over 4 times 5. That's 2 over 20. Now I'm going to show you that that is the same as 1 over 10. Notice I have 2 divided by 20, and that's 0.1. If I just hit math, fraction, enter, and enter, notice it reduces the fraction to 1/10 for me. Okay? Again, try to use the calculator only in the beginning while you're learning, and try to reduce on your own as you go forward. Now look here, you guys know that 2 over 4 is the same as 1/2. It's the same. 1 over 5 does not reduce. And look what happens if we reduce this first. We get 1 times 1 over 2 times 5. 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 5 is 10. And look, we get to the reduced answer quicker because we reduced the fraction in the beginning. 2b is another one that has no reductions early. It's pretty simple. 1 times 1 over 6 times 3. 1 times 1 is 1, 6 times 3 is 18, and bam, we have a fraction that we cannot reduce, and therefore we're done. Moving on to 3a. 3a, I'm going to show you real quick if you're the kind that likes to reduce. The 1/5 does not reduce. However, 3 over 9 is the same as 1/3. Okay, this gives me 1 times 1 over 5 times 3. 1 times 1 is 1, 5 times 3 is 15. When we get done here, we'll have a reduced fraction of 1/15. Now, if you don't understand these shortcuts in the beginning, then just do 1 times 3 and do 5 times 9. 1 times 3 is 3, 5 times 9 is 45. Now, back to the calculator and watch what happens here. We've got 3 divided by 45, and that gives us this decimal. Okay, if I go into math and I hit enter for fraction and enter again, notice it reduced my fraction again into 1 over 15. Again, we prefer you to try to get to the point where you don't need to use the calculator, but it's a great way to check yourself. And until you really master reducing fractions, it's a good way to help you learn. Back over here, if you're the kind that likes to reduce first, you get a 1/5 times 2 over 6 is the same as 1 over 3. Okay, and we get 1 times 1 on top and 5 times 3 on bottom. 1 times 1 is 1, 5 times 3 is 15. And look, again, even though it's a different set of numbers, we wind up, with 1 over 15 as the final answer. The full motion here is, again, 1 times 2 over 5 times 6, which is 2 over 30. You go back to the calculator, and you do 2 divided by 30. And, you can see that that's the same decimal as before. We go back to math, fraction, and enter, and there's the reduced fraction of 1 over 15 again. So that would be your final answer. Okay, we're going to flip one over here, and we'll go straight to multiplying again. We get 4 times 6 over 5 times 9. This 4 times 6 is 24, and 5 times 9 is 45. And you're going to guess it, that 24 over 45 reduces. So 24 divided by 45 is that decimal. Again, we go into math. Okay, and we hit enter for fraction and enter again. And look, 8 over 15 becomes our reduced fraction. Okay, now pay attention here, if you will, that again, 4 over 5 will not reduce. But 6 over 5, that becomes 2/3, because each of those you can divide by 3. We're going to take the 4 times the 2 over the 5 times the 3. 4 times 2 is 8. 5 times 3 is 15, a fraction that doesn't reduce. Oh, look, it was that reduced fraction that we got the long method before. Again, just remember, if you can shorten your calculations by reducing early, it's very beneficial. Here we go. Nothing reduces here. Pretty simple. 2 times 1 over 5 times 3. 2 times 1 is 2. 5 times 3 is 15. 2 over 15. 2 over 15 is your final answer. Okay. Here we got something that reduces. 3 over 6 is nothing more than a half times 2 over 7. And guess what? Here's another way to reduce. 2 goes into 2 one time. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 7 is 7. This will be our reduced fraction. If you didn't understand that second reduction, I had this. I had 1/2 times 2/7, which is 1 times 2 over 2 times 7, which is 2 over 14. And in the calculator, you get 2 divided by 14. There's your fraction. And you go to math, fraction, enter. And you can see 1/7 is the reduced fraction. Okay. This becomes 1/7 as well. Now the long way is to do 3 times 2 over 6 times 7. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 times 7 is 42. Again, we can go to the calculator if you don't know how to reduce that. 6 times 42 gives you, 6 divided by 42 gives you that decimal, which is the same as before. Again, we hit math, fraction, and enter, and we get a reduced fraction of 1 over 7. Our last one here, I'll do the reduction first. 2 over 6 is the same as 1 over 3 if you learn to reduce. 5 over 10 is the same as a half. We get 1 times 1 over 3 times 2. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 2 is 6. And this is going to be 1/6 when we're done. We can do 2 times 5 the long way and 6 times 10 the long way and get 10 over 60. And you should know that that is also 1/6. And it's another thing you can put in the calculator. That's going to do it for today. Next week, we'll be doing some distribution. You are encouraged, if you have questions, to get with your teacher in their Google Hangouts at 10:30 every day in the morning, or 10:30 or 2:30 in the afternoons. We'll be available at those times. We'll be checking email. All your teachers will be checking email every day, all day. So if you have questions for them, you can also email some stuff if you're not in a hurry to get the answer. And please be ready at least by Fridays to do some Delta math. They're only going to ask you a few questions every Friday. They're not going to be complicated. It's just going to be making sure that you have these skills down. Thank you and have a good day.